Welcome to Parenthood Bites, the podcast where we explore life as a parent in tech. I'm your host, Chow, and I have over 15 years of experience in tech, and I'm also currently working as a career coach. I'm the proud mother of 3 incredible boys. In each episode, we have an inspiring guest who will share their remarkable story. You'll find their wisdom and insights both relatable and enriching, because after all, we're all in this parenting journey together. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 6 of Parenthood Bites. We're here today with Mahima, who is an engineering manager at Spotify. She's currently located in New York. Welcome, Mahima. I'm so happy to talk to you today.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. How is it in your side of the States?
It's going to be 80 degrees tomorrow in the end of October, so yay global warming, I guess. My kid has a warm dino costume for Halloween and now it's too warm to wear it.
But it'll be nighttime, right? So hopefully it'll be colder at night.
Well, yeah, but he's 1.5. I don't think he's going to be awake that late. We have to make the most of it.
Yeah, that's crazy because it's like 46 degrees this morning and I pulled out my little beanie, my Hello Kitty scarf, my Hello Kitty sweater because it's cold over here.
California.
Yeah, that's why I see you in your t-shirt and I'm like, wait a minute. Is it hot over there? What's going on?
I'm wearing flip-flops. It's crazy.
I love it. I miss that.
Yeah.
So, I like to start by just asking what brought you to tech and how many years have you been in tech?
I have been in tech for a while now. I graduated from grad school in 2005, and I've just been working nonstop essentially since then. So it's like 18, 20 years. It's a long time. And what brought me to tech? I grew up in India. So back in the day, I guess there were just really two options for me to pick from. I would either do medical school or do engineering. And then I chose the latter because my dad, who's a doctor, said that being a doctor is hard and I'm probably not cut out for it, which back then stung. But in hindsight, I feel like he did me a favor. So that's how I got into tech. And I came to the United States to do my master's in computer science and I just have been working since then.
Wow, yeah, 18, 20 years, that's a while. And isn't it interesting how our parents' words affect us so much? Like for me, going to computer science was because my dad's like, it's so fun. I love programming. You're gonna love it too. And so I was like, okay, I was set on doing it, where it's like your parents may just say one statement and that's it. That's in your head.
Yeah, yeah. And I think about, how I will be when my kid goes to college. It's just all of this parenting is so much mirroring, what your parents did.
Yeah.
And it takes such a conscious effort to not do some of the things that they did that you just assume is good parenting. I mean, my parents were great, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it is just kind of generational.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our parents, they did everything they could for us, right? They did their best. They continue to do their best for us. And I think like you said, things just shift over time. And with my kids, I'm like, you do what you want to do as long as it makes you happy. But then one kid's like, I want to be a YouTuber. Another kid's like, I'm going to work at McDonald's so I could eat all the fries I want. So then I'm thinking, okay, maybe not do everything you want to do, but I want to believe when they get older, that will change.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah. Just provide like guardrails
yeah,
and as long as they have a college degree, they can do whatever they want.
right,
Is
right,
right.
but I don't want your dream to be eat as many fries as you can for free.
That's so smart though, right? See, he's thinking ahead. He's like, how can I make it as efficient as possible?
Right, right, where I don't have to worry about lunch, don't have to worry about dinner. I'll just be set. So, you've been in tech for 18, 20 years, like we talked about. That's quite a while. So, at what point did you become a parent? How many years were you working when you became a parent?
Yeah, I was focused on my career for almost the entire time. I have a 1.5-year-old. So when I had a kid, I was much later than a lot of my peers. I spent a lot of time in my 20s and 30s focusing on my career and ambition. And I was single at the time, so it was a lot easier. I didn't have responsibilities, so I had a lot of time. I worked long hours. And when I did become a parent, I was 41, which is, not a spring chicken. So it was a big shift for me because I went from working and just focusing on work and career to having to my priorities completely changed overnight, essentially.
That must be an adjustment, right? Because so many years of just focusing on work and then focusing on being married and things like that, and then going from all of that to having this little child you need to take care of.
Who's completely dependent on you, so he's not going to understand deadlines and projects and launches and things like that. So in a way, it's really kind of forced me to prioritize well.
Yeah, he's gonna cry when he wants to. He doesn't care if you're what you have going on.
Yeah. And I feel like, having a kid later than conventional, it has made me a better parent because I'm wiser, like I've seen more of the world, but I'm just physically exhausted. It's just so tiring.
They have so much
And
energy.
and you have 3 kids. I can only imagine how physically exhausting that must be. I'm just wiped out with one.
Yeah, especially at that age, right? One and a
Yeah,
half, they're starting to walk, and before that, starting to crawl. And you're just like, I just looked away, and now that kid's on the other side of the room,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. Split second.
Yeah, absolutely. So, since it was pretty recent, I was curious, what was the parental leave like at your work, and how was it
Yeah.
sharing the news with work?
Yeah, the parental leave was fairly generous. We had 20 weeks. My previous job, this was when I became pregnant, and I told my manager at the time about 6 months, 5 to 6 months prior to taking leave. I hadn't really decided how I was going to do it, and I felt like there was never really a good time uh, to say it. And one thing I thought about a lot, right, is like if you're a man, like you could tell people like couple of weeks before, but like for a woman it's physically like obvious that you're going to have a baby. In that case, COVID kind of worked for me because I was just behind a computer, so I didn't really have to tell anyone unless I was ready to, and which is what I did. And I only told my manager so we could kind of start thinking about putting plans in place, so it felt organic and I felt like I was in control of that decision.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, as a man, they're not going to know how pregnant your wife is. I mean, my
Right.
husband didn't tell them until he was like, "I got to leave early to go to the hospital." My wife was
Wow.
getting going into labor. But for me, it was like I couldn't because people are going to see your stomach growing, and being remote of course makes it better, but then also you still have discomfort when you're getting in the late stages of pregnancy, right? You have doctor appointments.
It's a disability and you're just exhausted, right?
Absolutely. So was your work, your team, your manager, were they supportive of you going on leave and
Yeah, I had the luxury of having worked on my team for a while. It wasn't a new team, it was a fairly mature team. We had challenges, with planning and sort of what would be how long to get it. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to take all of my leave in one stretch or take one half of it and then go back later in the
Mhm.
summer. Something to add here was it was also a really unique situation for me because at the time I worked at Twitter, which was going through its own big changes. We weren't sure if we were going to get a new owner. There was so much uncertainty. So one part of me wanted to take all of my leave and maximize, but then the other part of me wanted to come back, work for a couple of months, and then I really wanted to go see my parents in India. They hadn't seen their grandkid, and the only time I could have done that was December during the holidays. So it was just a really hard decision. And then ultimately I decided to split up the leave, and then I came back, and then I got laid off. So I got those 2 months, but it just wasn't paid, which was a bit of a disappointment. But it's just the way it is.
and that must have been really hard too, because here you are with this newborn and then being laid off. And then before you're like, okay, you already had a plan, right? This is me going
Right.
on leave. I'm going to come back. This is what I'm doing with my team. And it must have shifted all of that.
Yeah, it just really makes you realize that you can't control everything. Things are going to happen and you're just going to have to roll with it, which is actually good practice for being a parent. You can't really control what this human being does. Like they're
Yeah.
going to be their own person. So in that sense, it was good because it forced me to just let go. I said,
Yeah.
okay, whatever happens will happen, and I'll just take it as it comes. And at that point, postpartum, you're just so focused on the baby, you really everything else paled in comparison. But I'm going back to what I said earlier. I was somebody who had always only focused on their career. So that was a big shift to say, okay, I'm not going to think about my job. I'm not going to think about what I'm going to go back to. It was really scary at the time, but now looking back, I think it was fine. There's bigger problems in this world. I was very privileged that I could take that time off and spend that time with my child. And I know that not a lot of people have those kinds of options.
Definitely being able to spend that time with the kid is very important because they grow so fast. As you know, 1.5 already,
Yeah.
growing so fast.
Yeah.
So now that, I see you, obviously listeners don't, but you're in the office. So what do you do for childcare while you're at work?
Yeah. So I only got back to work. I took so in addition to the end of the last year, I took some more time off, and I intentionally decided to spend time until the end of summer. But of course, I started interviewing for new jobs earlier on, around June or so. So about 3 months ago, and then I just started a new job at Spotify. And until then, my son was just with me 24/7. It was just no one. There was no grandparents. There was no help. There was no part-time nanny. So we had to transition him into daycare. And daycare and nanny searches in New York is a whole different conversation. We can spend hours on that, but it's highly competitive. It's very expensive, as it should be. These people are taking care of your child. So we were able to get him into a home-based daycare, which is about 10 minutes away from our apartment. We thought a lot about whether to get a nanny, or a home, like a daycare situation where he could interact with other kids. And we felt that he was at the age where he would benefit from some social interaction with other kids. So that's what we've done. That's where he's going. It's been a couple of months now.
That's really great that you found a place that is closer to
Exactly.
home. Because, like you said, I know it's hard to find good childcare because sometimes you see them, but you're like, I don't know what goes on in the hours I'm not there. You got to find someone that you trust.
Oh, absolutely. It was such a big thing to let go. You're like, oh my God, I'm not seeing him for hours together. He's never been away from me.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, he was kind of confused. He said, what's going on? Like, I'm going from this world that I know to like this completely, it's like almost he would look at me during drop off like I was betraying him, and I was
Oh,
abandoning him, which I feel like it was harder on me than it was on him.
yeah.
But yeah, that's nobody tells you what a gut punch that is, when that happens.
Yeah.
But I think he's used to it now. He loves his teachers. They keep me posted and all the parents through the day. And you just want someone to be kind and loving to your kid, right? Like you want to keep them safe. And I feel like we lucked out in this daycare. And it's been good so far. Touch wood.
That's great. And I
Yeah.
definitely hear you on that mom guilt we get when we drop off our kids and they give us that look and you're just like, oh, maybe I don't have to go to work. Maybe you can, and
Oh, I say that every day. It's brutal, and my husband does the drop-offs in the morning, and my son is going through this intense attachment phase to my husband.
oh,
So drop-offs have been extremely drawn out and really depressing for everybody involved. So the teacher actually asked me during pickup, she's like, "Can you drop him off? Because he seems really sad in the mornings." I'm like, "Oh."
oh. You're like, he's gonna be sad with me too. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So just this thinking constantly about our schedules and who can do pickup and who can do drop off and what time can we go, it's just a lot of space to take up in your brain.
Yeah, but it must be nice to be the parent to pick up because I remember when you pick them up, they're so happy to see you, right?
Exactly.
That look, and you're just like, yes, this is what it's about.
My husband is very jealous. He's like, "Can we switch once in a while? Can I do pickups?" But you're right. It's just, he's like, "Oh, you came back." That look is like, "Oh my God, this is amazing."
That's awesome. So, I know you started this new job with your having your child and all, and so I'm curious, kind of how has your work life changed since becoming a parent? I know it's a different job, different company, but I'm sure your approaches are different and things.
Yeah. This is really the first job I've been at where I've had to juggle the two, because my last job ended when I went on parental leave. Um, it has changed in that, like I mentioned earlier, it's really forced me to be very, very intentional about my time. I make sure that I all of my important meetings are done in the morning, and then I keep my afternoons for focus time and a little bit of buffer time. So in case the train gets delayed or like I get stuck, I can still go and pick up my kid. Like so, there's a hard stop, right? Like earlier, I would say, oh, I can just do it later in the afternoon. I'll do it later in the evening. I'll do it after dinner. But I don't have that option anymore. Once I pick him up from daycare, I'm fully focused on him. I can't, like you said, I can't take my eyes off him. I have to get him home. I have to get him cleaned up. I have to make his dinner. Um, I have to ask him about his day. And I'm also aware that I only get to spend a total of 2 or 3 hours with him during the week now. So I want to make that count. So it really doesn't allow me any room to open up my laptop or check emails or check Slack, which is nice. Earlier, I would have had trouble multitasking, or I would like be on my phone and I'd be eating dinner, and it's not great. So I think it's changed for the better. To answer your question, it is really made me compartmentalize the two parts of my life.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great that you're able to do that. You're like, "Hey, I'm setting my boundaries so that this is my
Right.
time with my child." Uh,
Yeah, and my team has been very understanding. One of the pluses of working for a team that's based in Europe is they're done by my lunchtime. They're all gone for the day. So my afternoon is fairly free for me to focus on like actual creative problem solving and not sit in meetings. And my manager actually just came back from parental leave himself, so he's very empathetic. He's very understanding. The first meeting that I had with him, he said, "Look, I don't care how many hours you work. I don't care when you get the work done. You define what your workday looks like, and as long as you are able to meet your commitments, then that's fine with me." Which was huge. Essentially your manager is in the same boat as you. He has a small infant. He gets it. And that was really liberating for me.
that's really awesome having a manager, a team that's empathetic towards all of our different situations, right? So, yeah,
Right.
that's really great. And what I'm hearing a lot of is that now you're having that need to plan ahead a little bit more than before. Like you said, like planning
Right.
extra time for the train, scheduling your meetings, being intentional about it rather than, oh yeah, whenever, because it's so easy for us to do that
Exactly.
when we don't have the other responsibilities.
Right. And, it's a new team that I'm supporting. We don't know each other, so I have to build trust with them. What does that look like? We had office trivia last week, and I was like, oh, I'd really like for us to go as a team and just, kind of have fun and just let loose a little bit. But it was at 5 o'clock in the evening. So it just really, forced me. I was like, oh, well, I can't make that. So I have to be creative. I have to find other ways to do this. That would have been an easy way to do it. But like you said, I think it needs a little more forethought and more planning.
Absolutely. Those are always the times where I'm like, oh man, I'm missing out. But then at the same time, am I missing out? Like you said, you can make it up in other ways, but I don't want to miss out on my kid.
Yeah, yeah. I'll go to trivia when he's in college, I guess.
Yeah. You probably don't have to wait till college, maybe high school. When he's got
Good.
all this
Good.
homework, he'll be like, I'm busy with my homework. I'm busy talking to my friends, or even middle school.
Yeah, right. I should take advantage of the fact of the few years I have where he thinks I'm amazing and awesome.
Yeah, while he wants to be around you, and while he thinks everything you say is the truth. Sometimes my kids ask me stuff and I'm like, I actually don't know the answer to that. Go look it up on Google. And they're like, what? You don't know everything? And I'm like,
Oh,
damn, I should have pretended. Should have kept that going for a little bit longer. So, what has been your biggest struggle or challenge being a parent in tech?
that's a good question. I think parenting on your own has been incredibly hard. I think America is not set up for working parents. I think it's unless you make a lot of money or you have a lot of help. When my son was born, I was very lucky because my mother-in-law came to help us out essentially. So she lived with us for 6 months, and she did everything. All I had to do was focus on the baby and recovering physically, and it was such a gift for me. She did all of it. She never asked any questions. She never asked me to do this, or she never forced me to do anything that I wasn't comfortable with. And when she left, we were really completely at sea. We were like, oh my god, what do we do now? Neither of us had been a parent before. I wasn't working, but it was still hard because we suddenly went from playing with the kid when he was awake and like doing all the fun stuff to doing everything. So we not only had to take care of him, we had to take care of ourselves. So we had to cook and clean and, just figure out life as a three-person household. And is extremely difficult. For me, that was the hardest part. And you also want to be doing things, right? You want to take your kid out to like the park, and sometimes you're just so tired. You're like, oh my God, when am I going to? I just didn't have the energy to do everything. I think until I gave myself permission to not do everything and not be perfect at everything. Until then, things were hard, but then it started getting a little easier.
Definitely hear you on that. All of a sudden, all the things you had on your plate, it's like doubled, right?
Right.
Because you have this other kid. Like if they spit up, then it's like, oh, I gotta do extra load of laundry. Oh, this happened. Oh, now I gotta add this to my plate.
Yeah, and my husband was very, very, and like we were 50-50. We did everything together. It wasn't that one of us was doing the bulk of the work. And even then it was so hard and just made me really respect, single parents so much. Like how do people do it on their own? I still haven't figured that out. I think it's mad respect to anybody who does it on their own without help, but it just feels impossible to me to do it without a
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we're both very lucky that, I think because some husbands are like, it's your job. And so
Right.
like we're able to have that split. But like you said, not having that privilege is hard.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard. And all the adjustments you need to make. And
Yeah, and I once I started interviewing too, it got even harder if possible because I can't do like a 4-hour interview loop when my kid is like screaming in the background. I can't tell the
yeah.
interviewers, "Hey, like, can we postpone?" In this economy, I mean, it was a really hard market. As you well know, there would be one job posted and there would be like 200 applicants or so on LinkedIn. And then to even get a call back or like to even proceed to the final round, I felt was just such incredible luck involved, in addition to obviously, your merits. I felt like I couldn't blow it. I had to be fully focused on these interviews. And to be a parent and try to get a job at the same time I would not recommend it to anybody.
Was your son already in daycare when you were doing interviews?
No, we couldn't afford daycare on a single income household, So either both of us worked and sent him to daycare, or I stayed home and provided childcare. Like there was no way we could do both.
Yeah. So how did you juggle taking care of him during your interviews? Do you have any tips?
I don't know if I did it, well enough to be giving tips to people, but it required a lot of conversations. We had to block off our calendars. I had to tell my husband, you need to like take care of him during this time. My husband's sister lives in Toronto. She came over a couple of times to help and like watch him. Just truly takes a village, right? I leaned on so many friends and so many family members and my husband a lot. And then it's not just the interviewing, and then you'd have to wait to hear back, and then you're like, oh my god,
Mhm.
what are we going to do while we're waiting? So we couldn't really plan ahead even for daycare because I didn't know
Mhm.
when I would start. So it was like a chicken and egg problem. Like I couldn't figure out daycare until I got a job, but I couldn't get a job because I was fully in parent mode.
Right.
So it was hard.
Yeah, that's really tough. I'm really glad you found something that works for you,
Yeah. Thank
and
you.
you found a role that you're happy in. That's really, really awesome.
Thank you.
So, I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I'm curious, what are some things that worked for you in terms of achieving work-life balance?
Right now, obviously, it's much more important for me to have work life balance. It's not something that I can strive for. I have to have it. So like as I mentioned earlier, being setting very clear boundaries. One of the first things that I did was block my calendar. So I have 30 minutes for daycare drop off in the morning and then 30 minutes for pickup, just in case my husband can't do drop off, right? Like what happens then? So regardless of whether I was doing it or not, I put the block in. I also have like a focus time block. but I can actually get some work done. So I don't have to leave to pick up before I get any work done, right? So being very intentional about my time and making that visible to the rest of my team has helped. What else do I do for work life balance? Just sleep. Sleep is great. I try to sleep as much as I can. It's very hard with the 1.5-year-old, but I try. Sometimes as a treat, one of us will sleep in the guest bedroom just so we can have a full night of uninterrupted sleep. And it feels like a vacation. It's so amazing. So that's been really great for my mental health, if you can believe it. What else? What else about it's like work-life balance? I think, it's still kind of new. I'm in a new job. I'm still figuring out what work-life balance looks like to me. I think weekends, I try not to work on the weekends. I'll sometimes kind of check email or sort of finish up some documents or one thing that I utilize heavily is scheduled messages on Slack. So I'll set up a bunch of scheduled messages for people. So when they come online in Europe, they can address it. So when I come online eventually, then I'll have things to work on and I'm not kind of waiting on people. And that's been really helpful. So shout out to Slack for the scheduled message feature. Yeah, I think these are things. Every day is different. There's no one formula that I've figured out. Just taking it as it comes, really.
Yeah, taking it day by day and doing
Yeah,
what works for you on that day,
yeah.
right? Yeah, and I definitely hear you about sleeping in the guest room as a treat. Like for us, it's like, okay, if one person gets to go to another room or another bed or whatever and not be interrupted, that's a win, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
When I went to Taiwan a year ago and I did a full body MRI, and that takes about an hour. You're lying there, it's uncomfortable, there are sounds, but I was like, that was such a nice nap. My husband's like, didn't you feel claustrophobic?
No one's like asking me for stuff.
No, and then the beeping of the machines was just kind of like white noise, and it was just such a nice nap. I felt so refreshed after. They looked at me like I was crazy.
So good, right? Well, you gotta take whatever you can, right? Snatch those moments of peace.
Yeah, 100%. So what do you do to relax or unwind?
I'm only now starting to think about it. I have time. Like, for example, if I have a day off, like we had some holiday that my son's daycare is still operational, I still send my son to daycare for that day. And I was like, oh, I have the whole day, which is nice. And I try to be focused on myself because I rarely get any time to myself anymore.
Mhm.
Just trying to get back to things that I used to enjoy. I really like art. I love living in New York. There's just so much to do culturally. I just will go sit in a coffee shop for like half an hour and like have a cup of tea. To me, that sounds amazing. So small things like that, just enough. I think they called it, what's the opposite of triggering? I think it's called glimmer. It's like
Mm.
you snatch these small moments that help you
Mhm.
during the day, and they're called glimmers, which is like a Gen Z term, I guess. But I think it's so great. Yeah, slowly starting to get back now that I feel like I have some flexibility and I have some time to myself, focusing on those types of things. I would love to travel more.
Yeah.
My son is now walking, which makes things a lot easier. We're not like, carrying him all the time.
Yeah.
So we went to Montreal for a weekend, which was so nice. So things like that. So slowly pushing the boundaries of what we can and can't do with the 1.5-year-old. That's also fun for us.
Right, right. And I just learned a new word from you, glimmer. I didn't realize
Can you believe it?
that was for that. But yeah, I used to do the same thing. If they had daycare, I was off, I would just still send them. There were times when I would even take a day off and still send them. And at first I would feel guilty, right? Like, oh, I'm off. I should be spending time with them. But then I realized, no, I got to focus on me,
Yeah.
whether it's like you said, going to a coffee shop or just going for a walk, just doing something where it's like, do you hear that? Silence.
Yeah, exactly. I think it does make you a better parent too, right? I think
Yeah.
and then when you finally go to pick them up, you're just in a good mood, you're just much more
Hmm.
engaged, and
You're
so it's a
refreshed.
win-win.
You're ready for
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Let's bring it on.
Yeah. So, with your son being 1.5, what do you find is the biggest struggle with him at this age?
My God, there's so many things. I think the dreaded toddler phase, right, where they are exercising their independence, but they can't do everything on their own. So he gets really frustrated when I tell him he can't. sit on the kitchen counter when I'm chopping vegetables, or because I can't use rationale and logic with him
Right.
because he's not going to get it, you know. And I don't want to be that parent who just says no all the time without telling him why.
Hmm.
But he's not at that age where I can tell him why, unfortunately. So I think it's like a communication thing. He's already. I feel like he's such a sensitive kid. He gets it. But that's been lately, that has been a struggle. The tantrums. Oh my God, he'll just throw his back out and just scream, and I'm like, why are you screaming? What do you want? He's like, I want my pacifier, and he already has like two pacifiers in his hand. So it's just really I think it's funny, but it's also sad that
Yeah.
he's so frustrated. So hopefully he'll grow out of it. But to be very honest, this whole year and a half has just gone by so fast, and he's changed so much so quickly that I feel whatever I'm frustrated with today it'll be something different next week, because they change so much and grow so quickly at this age.
And isn't it fascinating the things that bug them at that certain moment? Like I remember I give my son like a banana. If I cut it a certain way, he would get so mad. And then it's
Right.
like, but if I don't cut it, it's too big for him to eat. So I have to cut it like just the way he wanted it. Otherwise, he would just be like, no, no banana.
No sound. Wow. I know. It's hard. I also live in Brooklyn, which is it's almost like notorious, for having an extremely involved. Like, I'm part of a group called Park Slope Parents, which is a community of local parents. It's like a subscription base. You pay $50 for the year, and you get access to a lot of resources like
Mm,
daycare reviews and events, and a classified section where you can buy and sell things. And it's been really useful, but it also really makes you very stressed out as a parent. To be a parent in 2024, I'm like, oh my God, am I impairing his cognitive development because I didn't teach him this one song?
yeah.
It's just so much pressure all the time to make sure that you're being a good parent. So at some point, you just have to be like, you know what? That's fine. I'm just like, I turned out fine. My
Yep.
parents didn't do any of this. He's going to be fine. So I have to remind myself of that periodically.
Absolutely. And it's like I'm doing the best I can, and that's it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And seeing, if I hope that if sees his parents, going to work and like doing their commitments and like having a routine, and like he'll pick up all of these things, and, he will become a better person, but time will tell.
There's so much pressure on parents these days, from even like making school lunches. I remember there was a kid in my son's class when he was in first grade, and I was really busy with work. So he would buy lunch at school. And she's like, how come you never make him lunch? And her mom would
Wow.
make these cute little lunches. And, I still think about that. I mean, now my kids get free school lunch. So they actually don't want school lunch because they say they have to wait in line too long. Then they don't have time to play and talk to their friends. So I
Uh-huh.
make them lunch now, but I don't make it really cutesy. I'm just like, get to the point and give them the
Right.
lunch they
Yeah.
need. And
Keep them fed. Right.
yeah, yeah. But that's still in the back of my head where someone's like, hey, how come you never make them lunch?
See, this is the thing that it's like, no matter what you do, there's always going to be some part of you that says, oh, what if I'd done something different? Or someone will have an opinion
Right.
regardless of what you do.
Right. And at some point, it would just be, hey, it's okay. We're trying our best and that's good enough. And
Right.
sometimes I
Right.
have that because my kids are older now. So sometimes I have that conversation with them of like, is there anything that you want different in your lunch? Anything you want me to do differently? And they're happy. I realized they're actually really happy the way they are. So they
Amazing.
actually
Yeah.
don't need more. It's just sometimes the voices in our heads or from other judgmental people. So,
Yeah. There were some moms who were hand making their kids' Halloween costume. And I'm like, I can't. Like, I thought about it. I said, I'm just going to buy it on Amazon. I
yeah.
really, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm glad to hear that your kids are happy, and, it gives me hope. So thank you.
Yeah. I usually do buy their costumes on Amazon as well. I think this is the only year I made one costume, but it was only because my youngest wanted to be a packet of ketchup. And I was like, I don't know where to find a packet of ketchup costume.
It's very specific.
Right,
Yeah.
right. He was very specific, very dead set on it. And I said, we have hand me down costumes. He said, no, I want to be a packet of ketchup. And I was like, where am I going to go find that? Nobody wants to be a packet of
Yeah.
ketchup. So,
Yeah.
so I had to
He's
attempt.
got a mind of his own. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, what's something that, you wish you knew before you had your child, or something that you would want to tell another parent in tech who's about to embark on this parenting journey?
I don't know if there's anything that I would say I wish I had known, because I feel like it's such an intensely personal journey for everybody. It's everyone's story of becoming a parent is so different. But if I could tell specifically people in tech, I would say, don't try to think that you can do it all. It's okay. I think the first year, or even the first 2 years, is really the hardest time you will ever have. I think, I hear about people going back to work in 3 weeks because they didn't have enough parental leave. And I think, wow, like I can't even wrap my head around it. So I feel like being in tech, we are very privileged for most companies to have generous parental leave. Take full advantage of it. You're never going to get this time back. And once you're physically recovered, if you're the birthing parent, and then when you go back, it's okay to ease into it. Like, work with your team, work with your manager to have a plan in place. You can do 50%, like you can do 80%. There's no one's expecting you to go back to what you were doing before you went on leave. And I think to expect that from yourself is also really impractical. So don't be too hard on yourself, I think. But yeah, I would say that that would be really my only advice.
That's really, really great advice, because I think a lot of us, after going on leave, whether it's vacation, parental leave, any leave, we're like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to work and hit the ground running. I need to go
Yeah.
back and make up for what I missed. Right. So I think it's a very good point to just kind of ease into that. And we expect ourselves to do 200% when we go back, but other people are not expecting that. They're expecting you to ease into it as well.
Yeah, and I think people are really empathetic, towards parents, towards people who have young kids. People get it, as long as you are intentional about the work that you're doing and you are upfront about what you can and cannot do. I think you people will work with you
Yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, thank you, Mahima, for sharing your story today. It was really awesome talking to you and
Of
hearing
course.
about your experiences.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chao. And you have older kids than me, so it's really nice to get a lens into what 10 years down the line for me will look like. So thanks for sharing all of your stories too.
Yeah,
Thanks for
of
having me.
course. And, if you ever want to hear more about their stories as older kids, you can always reach out to me.
It's like never ending. There's always a
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
Forever.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today on Parenthood Bites. We hope you found our episode informative and entertaining. If you're a parent in the tech world or know someone who is, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at chow@parenthoodbites.co, and we'll be thrilled to add your experiences to our interviews. That's chow, CHIAO, at parenthoodbites.co. And to our potential sponsors out there, if you're a business or know of one that would like to support and partner with our podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also reach us at chow@parenthoodbites.co. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, take care and stay curious.